Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be hailing from. I'm Eric, the IT guy Hendricks, and you are joining us for the Fedora Podcast, episode 42. We'll be talking about EPEL, specifically EPEL 10. And as we kick off, it looks like there might be a bit of a problem with the stream, but I'm going to go ahead and bring in our guests. And while we're doing introductions, we'll get them. We'll get the stream sorted out. But today we're going to be talking about extra packages for enterprise Linux. So let me bring in our guests here. All right, so Carl, welcome back to the Fedora podcast. It's been a while, but you and I've hung out on a few live streams between Fedora and RHEL Presents. So, for those that are new, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you work on as a day job, what you do for fun, and then what you do around the Fedora podcast as well.
Sure thing. Howdy, y'all. My name's Carl George. I am a principal software engineer at Red Hat. For my day job, I've been in the Fedora community and EPEL community and CentOS community for longer than I've been employed by Red Hat. It led to my job at Red Hat eventually. I'm paid at, my focus at work is just sustaining EPEL and keeping that going. EPEL's we'll get into it more, but it stands for Extra Packages for Enterprise Linux. It is additional packages that can be used on CentOS and RHEL, but they're explicitly community maintained packages. My team is pretty small. It's just 3 of us right now, and we can't maintain all of the packages that are in there directly. Our goal is to just be a force multiplier and do things in the infrastructure and planning, help with packages, but we're definitely not maintaining all of those packages themselves. They're in the Red Hat context, those are unsupported packages, but we're definitely supporting those in a more spiritual sense, in a wider area. That's work. For fun, I like to get away from computers when I can on the weekends. I like to go hunting, go out and get out on the water sometimes, either lakes or rivers. But here lately, I have been getting back into computers on hobby time with I've been getting more into mechanical keyboards, which is kind of fun. It's an endless rabbit hole of switches and keycaps and splits and all kinds of stuff that is it's a lot of fun, but it's not a cheap hobby.
Yeah, for sure. And it's one of those things that unless you spend a lot of time around a keyboard, it's just people look at you like you're crazy. But there
Yes.
is a difference. I mean, clicky keys drive me crazy, so I got to have those quiet keys.
Oh yes, there's I go back and forth. Some days I'm like, let me pull out this silent tactile keyboard switch, and then other days I'm like, yep, I want a little bit of a click.
Awesome. So if you are joining us, you did see that there's kind of a goof with the live stream. We're at a different URL. So if a friend of yours is trying to figure out where we are, just send them the updated link using the share button below. Meantime, while I'm communicating that out, Adam, welcome to the Fedora podcast. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us what you do for fun, and what you do around the Fedora ecosystem.
Hey, thanks for having me. My name is Adam. I'm also a principal software engineer for Red Hat. I've been here for more than a decade, doing a bunch of things in Fedora, and recently I started, well, I said recently, it's like 2 years ago, I started working on CentOS Stream, and that's what my day job is around these days. Maintaining the release pipeline and CentOS Stream release. Outside of work, I also like to get away from the computer sometimes, like cooking. I like reading paper books. But computer hobbies are also here, like gaming on Linux, playing with Home Assistants to automate my house, and mechanical keyboards are also invading my life a little bit, we can say.
Awesome. So what are you reading right now?
I've been reading the trilogy, what is called, The Three-Body Problem, recently. Nearly done. It's an interesting series of books.
Awesome. Yeah, I too love reading, and as much as I value my iPad or my e-reader, there's nothing sweeter than sitting in a rocking chair this time of year in front of a fireplace and reading a paper book. There's just something glorious about that analog motion after typing on touchscreens and keyboards all day, just having a paper book. It's incredibly relaxing. Great escape from well. All right, so I think people are starting to show up live. So I think we've got some of our streaming issues figured out. So why don't we dive into the topic? I know, weird time. This isn't our usual live stream time. Don't worry. Apparently, Adam didn't want to wake up at about 3 in the morning to join us. But why don't we start out with kind of the basic question? What is extra packages for Enterprise Linux or EPEL?
Sure. So, yeah, you said the acronym Extra Packages for Enterprise Linux. It is an initiative within the Fedora project to provide high quality packages, additional packages for CentOS Stream and Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which we usually just refer to as RHEL. The goal is for these packages to enhance those distributions without disturbing or replacing anything from the default repositories. If anyone that's worked with these type of distributions in the past, they know that there's a lot of third-party repositories out there. Some of those third-party repositories will replace packages from the main distribution. And while that can work correctly, it's a lot harder to get right and brings a lot more potential for problems. So any repos that you have that do replace packages, it's usually best if they warn you that they sometimes will replace packages. The ones you really have to worry about are where they don't warn you. You add the repo, and then it does replace packages and upset some other kind of balance. EPEL has a really good reputation in the community because of our rule of only being additional packages. It makes things a lot more stable, a lot safer. You can add that to a system and be very confident that it is not going to disturb or replace anything that would be working on the base system without the repository there. And it'll just give you extra packages for things you might need.
Yeah, and it really helps, especially if you're in an enterprise context where you just have the operating system, you install all the packages, and you just know things are going to work. You know that the QA process is there, that you install this package, you're not going to run into a lot of version conflicts. But sometimes that's just not enough. I want to kind of jump a little off script here, but I'm going to kind of rearrange that episode guide. So what I want to jump into is just how big is this initiative? Like, how many packages are we talking about?
Sure. So I rewatched the last time I came on the podcast and saw that I was like, oh, running the script, and then interrupted myself later. Oh, the script finished running. I actually did my homework ahead of time and got some numbers. So for context, I didn't get the numbers for Fedora itself. Last time I checked, Fedora is usually around something like 60,000 packages from, I think, like 20,000 source packages. And I do need to comment on that part real quick. When we talk about a package, we're usually talking about the actual RPMs that you would install when you run like DNF install, whatever. Packagers usually don't think in that context directly. They're thinking about the source package, which will be where they control the spec file and do the build. And that may result in one or more packages that get built from that. People are more familiar with that than they might realize. If you've ever seen a package that has a split with like the main package and like a libs sub package and a devil sub package, the sub packages is another way to refer to that, where you get multiple installable packages or binary packages from one source package. Fedora is sitting at about 60,000 packages from around 70,000 packages from about 20,000 source packages. EPEL 8, which is the repo we have for RHEL 8, is about 10,000 packages from 5,100 source packages. EPEL 9 is about 22,000 packages from around 7,500 source packages. Those are EPEL packages. They are the packages that don't make it into RHEL itself. So I went a little out of order. Usually about 10% of Fedora gets branched into CentOS Stream, which later becomes the RHEL product. The numbers I checked for that was that CentOS Stream 9 has a little over 7,000 packages from about 2,400 source packages. CentOS Stream 10 right now has about 6,300 packages, is a little bit smaller. Part of that reason is that it's just getting started. As time goes on through RHEL minor versions, new packages do get added to that. Maybe it won't be enough to catch it up to where CentOS Stream 9 is, but that's always a decision around what is supportable in the RHEL product. it controls what packages are in CentOS Stream. But then that directly affects which packages are eligible for EPEL later on. I mentioned the no conflicting rule and just being additional packages. So everything that other 90% of Fedora that doesn't make it into the CentOS content set that becomes the RHEL product set, that is eligible to be added to the corresponding EPEL repo and maintained by the community and used on those same distributions.
So this is no small undertaking. One of my favorite things to talk about is sort of the development process. A lot of folks know that I work for Red Hat, that I was up until very recently part of the Red Hat Enterprise Linux marketing team. And so also being host of the Fedora podcast, it's great to engage with folks and talk about how Fedora Linux takes from the upstream. So you talk about kernel packages or firewall D, and you build a distribution into Fedora. And then that feeds into CentOS Stream, and then eventually into Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So let's talk about let's talk about the packaging lifecycle. That's an incredibly simple and incredibly brief look at the distro lifecycle. But what about the package lifecycle? What happens when you add a package to RHEL?
I think Adam could probably answer that one a lot better than I could.
I could try, yeah. So most packages get into RHEL when I say we. I'll be saying we. That's a difficult thing with me, but bear with me, please. When Red Hat, about once every 3 years, creates like a new version of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, RHEL. It doesn't happen straight away. It used to happen like that years and years ago from Fedora, but these days there's something in Fedora called Fedora ELN. That's like continuously maintained preview of the next major RHEL version. So right now it's like if you want to sort of see what might be in RHEL 11, look at Fedora ELN. And that's just like continuously. But every 3 years, yeah, creates into Stream. There's a bootstrapping phase. That's how most content gets to there. It's always an interesting trade-off to like make it as little as possible, but also as complete as possible. And then RHEL gets created, and that's how it happens. Sometimes, as like RHEL gets updated over time, new dependencies might come in. They never remove packages from RHEL, but they can add some. And there's a process for that internally, and I think customers can request packages maybe as well. I'm not sure right now, but that's how it usually happens. It doesn't happen super often, but it does.
I just dropped a link in the live stream chat. I've made some diagrams about how some of that branching works. It's kind of difficult. I find it difficult to talk about just in an abstract way verbally. So usually, if I'm at a conference or something, I'll even pull out my phone and pull up this diagram. Just have it bookmarked so I can show visually how we have the relationship between Fedora, Rawhide, and ELN, how it branches to Fedora releases, and then how that branches to CentOS Stream, and then later RHEL minor versions. And even this is glossing over some of the finer details. I've seen charts that are much more detailed than this, and I've also seen charts that are less detailed. This was the one that I wanted that was kind of right in the middle of granularity to help explain that relationship and how things flow through.
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll get that link up on stream here in just a moment. Which, by the way, if you're interested in helping with the Fedora podcast, we are actually looking for a producer to hang out on the streams. You won't be expected to be on camera, but someone to kind of help with chapter markers and links. So just a free PSA there right in the middle of our interview. So basically, I'm just saying, come save me. I need help. So it was really fortuitous that this episode was scheduled when it was, because as Adam kind of alluded to, there is a huge compelling event right now, and that's in the form of CentOS Stream 10 and the RHEL 10 beta. So the RHEL 10 beta dropped about 2 weeks ago at the time of recording. And so if you want to see what RHEL 10 is going to look like ahead of GA release, usually around the summit timeframe, you can do so now. You can download the beta ISO. You can take a look. You can play with some of the new features, but you can also download CentOS Stream 10 as well and get a sort of, not really a byte for byte experience, but you can get a good idea of how RHEL 10 proper is going to look by looking at CentOS Stream 10. And so with a new major version of CentOS Stream 10 and a new major version of RHEL 10 on its way, we've got a compelling event in the shape of EPEL 10. So Carl, if you want to kick us off and talk a little bit about what's included with EPEL 10, what are some of the big changes that have come out as well?
Sure. So yeah, EPEL 10 is going to work a little bit differently than what we've seen before. And it's a long, complicated history. I went on a long rant about it the last time I came on the show. I'll try to avoid getting too far in the weeds because I know it's a lot of information. But the short version is that historically, EPEL has basically ignored RHEL minor versions and just had the major version for the same major version. That mostly worked, except when it didn't. It had some rough edges. We had a previous attempt at fixing those rough edges called EPEL Next. But we're basically deprecating that. It's still around for EPEL 9 Next, but we're going to try a different way in EPEL 10. Really, with EPEL Next, what we were beating around the bush about and not embracing was that we were sort of targeting two minor versions of RHEL at the same time. We were targeting the current minor version that was the published RHEL minor version, and then also CentOS Stream 9 as the upcoming minor version. So the way that relationship works, if you look at that diagram, CentOS Stream works as like the major version of RHEL, but if you look at it in a minor version context, like RHEL 9.5 just came out, CentOS Stream 9 has 9.6 content in it. It's not RHEL 9.6, but it basically works like that. In a similar way right now, RHEL 10 hasn't come out, the beta has, but CentOS Stream 10 is roughly 10.0 content. It functions like that. So it's content that is post beta, but leading up to the RHEL 10 GA release. So with EPEL Next, we were targeting two minor versions kind of accidentally, but we're going to lean into that and embrace it and actually have specific repos for each minor version of RHEL 10, and users will change which one they're pointing at over time. We've already started building out EPEL 10.0, basically. We're getting ready to announce that. It's already, like CentOS Stream 10 itself, it's already technically available. We did kind of a soft launch of EPEL 10 at Fedora's Flock Conference. We had a hack fest working on some of the packages. And we've got a lot of progress on that so far. We're already closing in on about 10,000 packages for EPEL 10, which is just amazing that we haven't even announced it yet. And that's from about 3,600 source packages. So we already have more packages in EPEL 10 than CentOS Stream 10. So we're beating you, Adam. But that's going along really good. We're going to announce it very soon. We're actually hoping to have it already announced by the time of this recording. We had a few lingering technical issues to work out. But hopefully we can have an official launch announcement later this week, or at worst case scenario, early next week. Maybe by the time the audience is listening to this episode, if they're not watching the live stream and just listening out of the backlog, we'll already have the announcement out there, and they can go find all the download links and all of that. They can find it now if they're paying attention, but we'll have a nice proper announcement, release announcement for that very soon.
Yeah, if you're watching live, watch for it, and if you're from the future, go ahead and download it. It's amazing, I'm sure.
Yeah, so minor versions of EPEL 10, a lot of maintainers are really excited about it. It solves a lot of the problems, those rough edges we had before. It introduces a lot of challenges on the infrastructure side that we've either already addressed or have plans to address. But that's work that it should make it where it's a more consistent experience for maintainers and for users. And actually, in a weird way, it actually makes EPEL package maintenance work a little bit more like Fedora package maintenance. If you're curious about that, about the nitty gritty details of how that works, I won't get into all of it here on the live stream, but there is a discussion post on Fedora discussions. I created a short URL a while back for it called just red.ht /EPEL 10. That'll take you to the discussion post about that with a lot of the details. We're working on we've added some of the documentation recently about it to EPEL docs. We're going to add some more for FAQ items and things like that. for people that already are packagers and want to know how this is going to change their workflow.
Awesome. Yeah, so if you head over to red.ht/EPEL10, you can actually drop straight into the conversation. Kicked off around November of 2022, if you can believe that. And has
Actively
been,
planning this for about 2 years.
so that is awesome that that a community can come together and start thinking about something and then be on the other side and see that come to fruition. So congratulations to you and the team. That's incredible to pull this off. And anything that smooths this transition from major version to major version or between the three impacted distros is incredibly helpful.
I'll highlight something special there that you mentioned. It's great that we were able to do that. The main reason we were able to do that is because Red Hat pays people like me to actually work on EPEL. This is the kind of thing that I was talking about, how it's not a good use of our time to just work on individual packages, but taking a holistic approach and planning and looking at how we can do things better. In the past, before my team existed, EPEL releases kind of came together, once they became an emergency. So there would be like, a RHEL beta, and then people would say, oh crap, we got to get EPEL ready. And then sometimes they would get it ready close to the RHEL release date, sometimes after. It was usually just a scramble. Nobody was paid to work on it full time. It was a few people's side hobby that they wanted to see happen. But I think it was in 2021 when my VP asked me if I wanted to start a team to work on EPEL directly. And I said, yeah, actually, I've been working on EPEL since before I got hired, so I would love that. We started that team, and Red Hat's investment in that in the community has allowed us to get ahead of things and improve things in a way that it even started earlier within EPEL 10 with EPEL 9, which was like really the first big project for that official team. We were able to launch it about 5.5 months before the RHEL 9 launch, and I think we had about 2,600 source packages. I forget exactly how many binary packages, but we had a good size package set by the time of the RHEL 9 launch, which was really great to see. And we're going to far outpace that this time with EPEL 10, mainly because we started sooner. It's simple math.
So fun story. Carl and I were actually part of the same new hire class at Red Hat, which, can you believe this, buddy, was 5 years ago.
It's pretty wild. It simultaneously doesn't feel like that long and also feels like way longer than that.
Yeah, in fact, my onboarding experience was kind of derailed by a little thing called the pandemic. I was getting ready to head back to Red Hat Tower when the world shut down. I was going out for sales training, and that's when the world shut down. But yeah, it's gone by so fast, and yet it's drug on so much. But I cannot believe it's been 5 years. How much the industry has changed since then. So we've talked a little bit about what is EPEL. We've talked about the process of adding packages. We kind of talked about the current release, pending current release. So what about the future of EPEL? Obviously, EPEL 10 was a huge milestone, especially just skimming over the notes in the EPEL 10 proposal. This was a huge milestone. But now, like all software, now we get to start thinking about the next major version. So what's the future of EPEL look like?
So we're getting in the planning, our earliest possible planning phases of what EPEL 11 will look like. We haven't quite got EPEL 10 out the door. We're on the verge of it. Some of the planning stuff for EPEL 11, I've been tapping the brakes on, and I'm like, hold on, let's make sure this EPEL 10 stuff works. It should work. It's working so far, but let's get our feet underneath us a little bit for how this works with the transition between minor versions and managing that in the infrastructure. But we are already talking about what does EPEL 11 look like differently. There's a special thing right now called, there's two special things called ELN and ELN extras. And first, I'm going to let Adam talk about ELN a little bit more because he works directly on that. And then I'll talk about what ELN extras is, and then how we're looking at kind of rebranding that into early pre-EPEL 11.
Yeah, ELN is like the next CentOS stream, really. Just to make the jump smaller in 3 years or whatever, people are already working on maintaining Fedora ELN, which is like a smaller package set than in Fedora proper. And that's going to become CentOS stream in the future. There will be, of course, changes. So that's what ELN is. And I think ELN extras is like something on the top that would extend it, like extra packages for it, right?
Yes. ELN extras is exactly what it sounds like. It is sort of the EPEL to ELN's RHEL. If you think of ELN as the next RHEL or the next CentOS stream, it's like EPEL like that. The branding is a little weird, and it's not part of the EPEL initiative, but we're looking at changing that and actually looking further upstream, actually brand it as EPEL 11 early. Probably have it on a different path on the mirrors just to not confuse people too much with I know we had a little confusion when we started publishing EPEL 10 to the normal paths, and people were like, wait, 10's not out yet. And I'm like, well, we're getting it in place and we don't want to change the path later. For 11, we'll probably have it in a different path while it's in this ELN phase. There's a lot of details to work out about how we would do it. One of the benefits of we've pushed with EPEL 10, we've pushed it about as early as we possibly can before we start having packages that need to get rebuilt because of changes in the base distribution. One example of that would be we started building EPEL 10 packages back in August a few months ago. At the time, in CentOS Stream 10 Composes, Perl was still on 538, and since then it got rebased to 540. Luckily, we only had one Perl package in EPEL 10 that had built against it and needed to be rebuilt for the new version of Perl. But that's the sort of change that we really don't want a lot of packagers adding things to and having to redo that work. EPEL 11 would change that entirely, where maintainers would be doing their packages early and might have to rebuild them 2 or even 3 times to get them ready for the actual proper EPEL 11 launch. So I have concerns around that, how that would work. I don't think it would make sense for every package to jump on right at the earliest possible point in EPEL 11. But there are some packages, which is the same thing that we have now with ELN extras. It's a very small subset of what eventually goes into EPEL. Maintainers that want to start building it against ELN now to have the earliest possible indication of things working differently, and they don't mind rebuilding it a few times to stay current with what the build route looks like for the next major version. So we're working through planning that now. I've been pushing that back till after we get EPEL 10 out the door, and probably till after we get the first minor version branching done. Early next year, we're going to have this event where we're going to take so we're building EPEL 10.0 right now, the repository. That's built off the EPEL 10 branch, just the major version, and published as just the major version. We're going to have an event early next year where we actually separate it and put EPEL 10.0 in its own repo path of 10.0, building off of an EPEL 10.0 branch in the package sources. And then the unversioned one will become 10.1, which kind of corresponds to whenever CentOS Stream 10 can start getting RHEL 10.1 content. It'll be a very, very closely tied event like that. And at that point, we'll have the 2 repos, 10.1 and 10.0. I want to get through that mass branching event first, all the technical bits of that, and then really start looking closely about whether or not we want to do these proposed changes for EPEL 11 and get it started even earlier on a pure opt-in basis for the maintainers that are really interested in getting their builds in as quickly as possible. One other quick analogy I forgot about. I was going to bring up, Adam. It might have been you that told me this, but somebody told me at some point that the way to think about ELN is that it is the answer to the question of what if we branched RHEL from Fedora today. It's not actually branching it every single day, but it answers that question. Like if we rebuilt Fedora Rawhide with RHEL flags and made these decisions and these changes in this content set, what would a compose of that look like?
Yeah, pretty much that. That must have been Steven who told you that. That sounds like Steven. But yeah, I would agree.
It was one of y'all too.
So this raises a very, very important question. Is EPEL the ultimate answer to the ultimate question, which is, of course, the question of life, the universe, and everything.
I don't think it will be until it's EPEL 42.
I mean, this is Fedora Podcast 42, so
Yeah.
I was going to work that into the introduction, but
Somehow.
we had stream issues, so
Yeah, I don't want to start
there's the hat tip
conspiracies,
to,
but like this feels like the evidence that this is the answer. So yeah, I think I agree. Definitely not a coincidence.
we were able to drop Fedora Linux 41's review on Fedora Podcast 41, but EPEL was the next episode, so I must assume that EPEL is the answer to life, the universe, and everything.
You know what you could do is have the episode 41 be Fedora 41 release, and then 41.1 is the next episode, 41.2, and then bump it to 42 with the Fedora.
Just hold it for 9 months.
Minor version your podcast episodes.
Just
There
to
you
make
go.
it easier to follow.
Gosh.
That would be terrible.
It's-
I'm joking.
It's bad enough that we went an entire episode with the wrong background, because as just kind of a hat tip to Fedora artwork, the background of the podcast, if you're watching the video version, is actually the PNG of the wallpaper for each major version. So the Fedora Linux 41 episode had the wrong background, but I fixed it for this episode, so it's blue now instead of I believe 41 was or 40 was a forest, whereas this one's blue and very abstract. So we do upgrade the show every so often. If you're watching the audio version, you're probably like, I don't know what he's talking about. We do have a video version. We're on PeerTube and YouTube, and also we stream live to Twitch. So if you want to catch the video version and put faces to the names, definitely check us out there.
And you can
But
see
before
three
we-
faces on a Fedora blue background.
Right, exactly. There is a more serious question to ask, though, and that's if someone has looked at the sheer number of packages and the amount of work going into EPEL, they've got to be wondering, how can I get involved? I want to become a developer, or I want to give back to the community and work on an open source package. How can folks get involved with the EPEL community?
So right in the name, it's extra packages. So my mind immediately goes to getting involved in the packaging. I have bias there. I enjoy RPM. I'm a weirdo that actually likes RPM packaging. But there's a lot of weirdos like me that do that in Fedora and do that in EPEL. I mentioned before that this is a team effort. This is not just Red Hat, bestowing these packages upon the community. This is, my team's funded to actually get the infrastructure up and get things going and plan things. But as far as adding individual packages, that is a wide community effort. The vast majority of EPEL packages are not maintained by Red Hat employees. They're just done by the community, by Fedora maintainers. And so I think that is the most beneficial way for people to get involved. EPEL is fully part of the Fedora project. So the answer to getting involved in that packaging is to become a Fedora packager. And then to become an EPEL packager, once you're a Fedora packager, it's just you request another branch and you build it. It's all the same infrastructure as Fedora, the same build system, the same updates pipeline. It's just different branches. Like in the package sources, we'll have the Rawhide branch leading, and then we'll have like an F41 branch and F40 branch. EPEL package sources are just additional branches in the same package source. So EPEL packagers are just Fedora packagers that also participate in EPEL in the same places. Another area that we like getting participation is QA for the pending updates. Because these are community maintained packages, there's not an official QA that goes through for them. A lot of packages, they'll go to a testing repository for a week, and then they can move to the stable repository with positive thumbs up in the like a +1 in the update system we call Bodhi. We call that giving karma. And participating with those updates, turning on the EPEL testing repo, installing what's available, and making sure it still works correctly for your workload. Maybe on one system if you have multiple, and not applying it to all the systems at once, just to verify your workload, and then giving that feedback that it does work correctly. That helps move packages from testing to stable faster, and helps. It's really beneficial whenever it finds a problem. That's the worst thing for when we see a package go to the testing repo for a week, have no feedback whatsoever, and then move to the stable repo, and then the maintainer gets a bug report. Hey, this breaks this thing or does something differently that it shouldn't. That's the worst whenever it's already gone out to stable. So catching those things early in the testing repo, they're community maintained and community QA as well. So that's another great spot to get involved. Should have a link, about joining the Fedora packagers and also joining the Fedora QA team, and both of those apply to EPEL as well as Fedora. If packaging for EPEL interests you, you should also package for Fedora, and the same thing with the QA. It's all the same systems, and it's a big net benefit. A lot of the work done in Fedora directly benefits EPEL. Either in the current version, it gets pulled in as part of an update, or it goes into the next version of the EPEL package. One third thing that I'll mention that's really important is documentation. It's very rare for a project to be really proud of their documentation. Usually everyone's making excuses for their docs. I won't go that far, but we do have, EPEL has a good amount of documentation, but I know that our organization leaves a lot to be desired with where things are, and sometimes it's hard to find things. I know where all the skeletons are and have things bookmarked and go straight to what I need, but we've had feedback before where, I couldn't find this, and it's led to some rearranging. But I think that if anyone is interested in documentation, which is, I know, fairly rare, but EPEL Docs would be a great place that someone could contribute if they are interested in that. Just looking at the overall structure of it. And if you don't want to get involved in the overall structure, just let us know that if you go to find something in the EPEL Docs, you cannot find it, and we link it to you and say, yeah, that's explained right here. Stand up and point out that, hey, that's not where I thought it was. I couldn't find it. Is there any way we could organize it better? Sometimes just asking the question itself is a contribution, kind of like a bug report of saying that this was a bad user experience of finding this thing because I couldn't find it. And it gets our gears turning about how we could structure that better. And bonus points if you can send the pull request to the docs and actually say, yes, this section should be linked from here, or move this entire part to this other page, things like that. We'll take all the help we can get as a community initiative.
And don't think that you have to be an expert in any of this in order to contribute. In fact, the Fedora community is one of the most welcoming groups of folks I've ever come across, either in open source or in technology in general. So, I mean, Carl was even asking when I was going to start packaging RPMs, and as I recall, you have at Red Hat Summit, you actually host a workshop. So maybe we could, it would be really cool. Sorry, this is off the cuff. So this is not me volunteering Carl for more work, but kind of is. What if we did a version of that workshop on the Fedora YouTube channel?
So I've done this workshop a few times. It works way better live hands-on than it does virtually. Virtually is kind of difficult. I'm open to discussing that, and maybe we plan about ways to do it a little bit better, but it works way better in person. If you're going to Red Hat Summit, look in the workshops track. I haven't got any notification about it being accepted yet, but it's been accepted 2 or 3 years in a row. So fingers crossed they're not tired of me yet and they accept that workshop again. But yeah, if you're going to Red Hat Summit, check the workshop schedule and see if you can go take an RPM packaging workshop if you're interested in it. If we don't do it at Summit, I am also going to be doing it at the, again, I haven't had the actual acceptance email yet, but it's submitted as part of a Fedora and CentOS Classroom, is the session that we named it at the Scale Conference in Pasadena, California, in March next year. So that would be another opportunity if someone wants to attend a live RPM packaging workshop. That would be a good place to do it. You could meet me and ask questions and get stood up and get your feet wet with actually building RPM packages. And it's beginner level, but it's also, I've had people attend that have built some packages before, but they've just kind of done it off the cuff as they had to. They attend the classroom and say, okay, well, I knew the basics, but you filled in a lot of gaps about how this works and the proper tooling and how to check lint these things correctly. So it's very beneficial. Highly recommend it. I'm biased, but I think it is a good thing. We can talk more about possibly doing something virtual. I think, didn't y'all do it once on the RHEL Presents or the Into the Terminal podcast?
I think the team did.
But if I remember right, that was kind of an artificial, like the hosts were doing it, going through it together, not really like having general attendees pop in and
Right.
ask all kinds of random questions. That's where it gets
I
tricky
think that
with
was
with
Nate and
virtual live.
Scott on Into the Terminal. I think it was, because I vaguely remember them coming up with a fake package and packaging it. But with
It's
having
fine if
tens
it's
of
scripted
thousands
and
of
you have
packages,
the people that not scripted, but expected questions of people versus like here's a group of 20 strangers that are all in a virtual chat throwing all kinds of random problems at you that things aren't working correctly because they typoed something or missed a step, things like that. That's where the live workshop goes off the rails.
well, maybe you and I stage a workshop. You could walk me through my first package, my first packaging project. I'm sure we can
That
come up with
sounds way
something.
better.
What about you, Adam? How would you recommend folks get involved?
In EPEL or in CentOS in general?
Yes.
I would say, so Kyle covered EPEL quite well. I would say if you want to get involved in CentOS, there's a bunch of things that you can do. You can, of course, get involved straight in CentOS stream, and if you have something to contribute there, you can, of course, do that. There's also a bunch of SIGs, which are special interest group in the CentOS project that you can get involved with. And they do interesting stuff, like you can run CentOS stream in huge scales, or on your laptop with a KDE. We have a KDE live image thanks to the alternative images SIG. You can have CentOS CoreOS builds and OpenShift. I'm sorry, RDO, OKD. That's the acronym. I'm excellent with acronyms. One of those three little acronyms it is.
There's a quiz. You have to define all of these acronyms you're throwing out there.
Yeah, exactly. That's the step one. And I'm just kidding. So yeah, find either a SIG that you like, or maybe you have something to contribute to CentOS Stream proper and come in. We're also on the Fedora chat and in the Discord. So if you have a Fedora account, it's also a CentOS account, and like using the same platforms for communication. So you can just find a CentOS channel. Like there's for example, integration SIG, which I'm in a lot, so CentOS docs, and you can say hi and we can take it from there.
A little birdie told me that you're working on a revamp of the CentOS Stream Contributors Guide as well.
Yeah, that was my morning today. A bunch of pictures and writing, so let's see, that would be interesting.
Maybe,
yeah, if you can find it in time, give me feedback in the PR, because the
yes,
writing
I will definitely
is
do
terrible.
that. Not to throw you under the bus. Hopefully, future listeners, when we do the actual announcement later this week or next week, we'll have the new contribution guide all finished up and linked in there, so that way people that are interested in getting involved at that level can take a look and see what it looks like to contribute to. You're effectively contributing to RHEL by contributing to CentOS Stream. Well, for the main distribution, the SIGs are a separate part that don't go into RHEL.
Yeah, that's the weird thing about CentOS Stream. Is like a community distro, but also like everything goes to RHEL, and it's so tied together. We haven't talked about it even that, like, if you build if a RHEL maintainer, which only RHEL maintainers can build CentOS Stream, if they build something, it triggers in both like the CentOS Stream build system and RHEL build systems at the same time, and then like both packages progress the gating at the same time, and like if one lands, the other lands as well. But in RHEL, you get it like in half a year or more. In CentOS Stream, you get it within a week, so you can preview what's coming. But yeah,
you did a really good talk about that at Fedora's Flock conference. That you mentioned to me that it was a redo. You redid the talk I'd seen before. I did go back and watch that. I'm digging up the link now so we can include it in the live chat and the show notes. But it's a good talk with an overview that I really enjoyed. That I want other people to see as well.
Yeah,
oh,
awesome.
great to hear. Yeah, that was Yeah, I've done a bunch of these. This one was from scratch almost. So if you've seen one of the ones before, this should be a little more fresh version of it.
Oh, you know what? It's on the Fedora channel, not on the CentOS channel.
Yep.
And that's a great point, because grabbing the link here, that's a great point, because the marketing and media teams, part of the Fedora community that I'm a part of, and Joseph Gayoso, who's also been a host on the show, and others, work really hard on producing content and sharing that out with. Widely. For instance, like every episode of this show has links, has contact forms, has chapter markers, and the link we just shared also is part of a playlist from the most recent Flock conference. So there's tons of content out there, tons of ways to get engaged. And so as we wrap, I know Carl and Adam, you guys are both on Matrix. I think you're both in the Fedora Podcast room. So if you want to get engaged with them, just head on over to the Fedora Matrix server. Definitely get signed up there and join the Fedora Podcast room. Check out the links in the show notes. They'll be available shortly after the stream ends. But I really appreciate you guys jumping in and being part of the show today.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
So Noah wasn't able to join us. There was a conflict. I actually just heard from him about 3 minutes ago. So he had a scheduling conflict today because of our altered live time. But I believe the next episode will be live. We'll be live in 2 weeks. We've got a lot of great content coming up. We'll be interviewing Noel and Kyle from Bazite. We'll be talking about gaming on Linux a little bit. We're talking to a hardware partner. I'm not sure if I can release the name yet, but yet another manufacturer is looking to deploy Fedora out of the box. So that interview is coming up right after the first of the year. And we're also going to be talking a little bit about kind of a day in the life of a code developer. And hopefully early next year, Noah and I are talking about doing a behind the scenes of the Fedora podcast. So we're going to do a Fedora podcast episode about the Fedora podcast. Kind of what tools are we using? What tools do we hope to move to? So a lot of great content coming up. We've got one more episode this year. Can't believe we're saying that, but yeah, we've got one more episode as we wrap up 2024. So really thankful for all of you that are listening. So enjoy the holidays, take some time off, maybe package some RPMs, the thought, hang out with us on Matrix. And until then, you've got plenty of homework to do. Go check out some of the Flock Talks and some of the other episodes of the show, but we'll be back live in 2 weeks. So with that said, on behalf of my guests today, Adam and Carl, and Noah, who couldn't be here, but sends his regards, I've been Eric the IT Guy Hendricks, your host, and this has been the Fedora Podcast. We will see you all next time.